Guys, welcome. This is Dave Shrine, and we're here for this week's DAC Talk. It's a conversation for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs, and really excited about this one because it's all about freelancing. And it seems like no matter if you have a business or if you've thought about starting a business, freelancing always comes into the picture. It's always something that we wind up talking about, and so tonight we've got my friend Emily Carlton, Emily A. Carlton on Twitter, who's joining us, and she's a freelancer. She's absolutely fantastic at what she does. I love everything that she puts out, and so Emily, I'm really glad that you're up for it tonight. I know you were feeling a little bit under the weather, but I appreciate you making the sacrifice. It's awesome to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm getting over a cold that I had this weekend, so excuse me if I sound like a dude.
No, no, you sound great. You sound great, and I think everybody out there would agree that you sound great too. So before we get any further, there's two things that I want to do. Now, the first one is I just want to let anybody know that's watching. You can interact with us using this little guy up here, the DAC Talk on Twitter. I'll be following that, and Emily, if you want to follow it too, you can, but I'll be following it, and anything that you guys tweet with DAC Talk, it's going to come through, and we'll see it, and we'll get to it, we'll answer it, any questions you have, or if you just have something you want to share. I know, June, you've been doing that quite a bit, and I love it. The other thing is, Emily, would you just share a little bit about who you are, what you do, what area of freelancing you're in, just so we have a little bit of context for our conversation tonight?
Sure. So I just moved to Nashville about 2 months ago, so I'm in the middle of transition. I used to work at a church. I was there for a couple years doing church communications. I've had freelance work on the side for the past 8 years, but not very seriously until the past 3 or so. So most of my freelance clients are bands, businesses, or authors, or bloggers, writers, however you want to say that word or categorize yourself. And some churches and nonprofits throw them in there too, just because of my church experience. So I don't really turn anyone away necessarily unless their project doesn't really jive with my personality or what I want to do or my timeline. So I have a really wide variety of clients.
That's very, very cool. And so you lean heavily into the graphic design. And just real quick, like, why did you decide to go into the graphic design field?
It was kind of by accident. I'm very creative, but I'm also very logical. And so when I went to college, it was, okay, let's do something with art because that's what you're good at and that's what you love to do. But you also need to make money because this is a bad economy back in 2010.
Yeah.
And so I picked a major that you can make money at while doing art, and that was graphic design. I'd never heard of it beforehand, but I just jumped in and I loved it and had a really great experience with my professors and internships. So I haven't looked back ever since, and I've just been designing like crazy ever since then.
That's awesome. That's very, very cool. The thing that I love about the arts, and I think, really it is the arts when you think about a lot of the creative things, graphic design, visual design, artistic design. You talk about, music, you talk about writing, you talk a lot about these artistic things. It seems like it's just like custom built for freelancing, right? Because often we look at it and like, unless I'm like the really well-known author or the really well-known graphic artist, or my stuff shows up everywhere, or I'm like, the state symphony, like I can't get a full-time job doing this, which that's not the truth, but at least this idea of, well, I can get a job and I can get some experience doing little jobs here or there. It kind of provides a little bit of hope to be able to do those artistic things that may be a little bit harder to break into professionally, but at the same time you really get to lean into who you are and the things that are near and dear to you. I know when I started freelancing, I didn't even realize I was freelancing. As a matter of fact, the whole way that I got started, I was telling my wife this story the other day, but the whole way that I got into doing any type of graphic design or web development is I had a band back in, gosh, it was probably 2003, and I wanted a website. I knew we needed a website. Even at the age of 20 years old, I knew that a website was going to be really valuable. So I taught myself how to use Microsoft Front Page, and I taught myself how to use Photoshop, and I just started putting together all these graphics. And sure enough, over the course of time, I had people here or there just say, "Hey, can you make a graphic for me real quick? Hey, can you, make a quick website for me?" And so Yeah, I didn't even realize I was starting to freelance, but I was. And, you get, when you're that young, $50 here, $60 there. It's like a lot of money. Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, now I can go out and watch a movie and actually get popcorn at the theater this weekend. So I didn't realize that I was freelancing, but that's kind of how it began. And as people started asking me to do things that wasn't necessarily in my wheelhouse, but I was interested in, I just learned how to do it. I'd learn how to do it on their dime, and I'd produce something that they were happy with. So how did you start to kind of get into the freelance area? So you went to school to do it professionally and make money, but how did what did that first freelancing experience look like for you?
Like I said, it started out pretty slowly, and I never set out to do freelance on the side. It just kind of happened. Like you said, a friend said they needed a logo, or my parents' friends needed something done, and I'm like, oh, sure, they're family friends. And then it just got to the point where it was like, okay, this is actually a thing. I need to be charging more. I need to be more organized. I need to have a better portfolio website so I look more legit to people who aren't family and aren't friends. And so
Mm-hmm.
it just kind of grew from there. It's interesting. I used to think, even 3 years ago, if someone asked if I wanted to be a full-time freelancer, I'm like, no, that's for idiots. And I'm gone completely 180 now. I'm like, no, freelancing is amazing, and I might want to do that one day full-time. So it's funny to see how the business and the people I've surrounded myself with and the books that I've read have changed my opinion on freelance and how it's not for fools. I've just known some fools who do freelance that have kind of tainted my attitude.
Well, that's a really, really good distinction. It's not for fools, but there's fools who have done it, and that's absolutely true. And the biggest thing that I found was a struggle for me as I realized that I was stepping into freelancing was this idea of, shoot, I wasn't planning on this, so I'm not really prepared for it, and I don't really have that portfolio. And more than that, I really don't know. You start charging hourly, right? You don't know the value that you bring, so you start charging hourly, and then as time goes on, you start hearing things like charge based upon value and things like that. But there's just so many unknowns, especially when you weren't planning on doing it in the first place. And I think this in episode 9, I think it was, I talked with Miko Seymour, and we talked about the fastest way to achieve success, and the fastest way to achieve success is learning. And so I found that as a freelancer, continuing to learn and continuing to invest in my education, and I'm not talking like a college education or a DeVry Institute education. I'm talking about reading books, reading blogs by people who I respected and who were doing what I was doing, and picking up whatever I could from other successful business people. Like, that is what led me to begin to understand, okay, I need to come up with some pricing. Okay, I don't need to charge $15 an hour because I can get work all day long for that, but I'd rather charge $50 an hour and work 2.5 times less. And so I found that as a freelancer, education was my best friend, and learning, and not settling for just, oh yeah, this is fun to do for 2 hours at the back end of a Wednesday, but like, how can I actually make this work for me? Because I have something that people want. So how do I find more people who want it? How has freelancing kind of developed for you? I mean, do you still charge the same thing that you did at the very beginning? Are you still prioritizing and doing these things the same way, or has it kind of evolved over the years?
I'd say it's evolved over the years. Just my own attitude and who I've followed. And John Acuff has a really good quote about learning, and he says, I'm probably going to botch it, but the gist of it is, you lost the right to say I can't because of Google. Like,
Yeah.
there's no excuse. I don't know how to do that. It's like, well, even if you don't, find someone who does and make it happen. Like, the world's not going to wait for you. You have to kind of catch up to what everyone else is doing. And like I said, there's no excuse. There's Skillshare, there's Treehouse. Like, there are so many online learning opportunities that are very affordable that there's just no excuse to be lazy about it, I guess.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. There is no excuse. And I found that for me in these last several years that there's a lot of people with big dreams and big ideas of what they want to do, and there's a lot of people who are also very lazy. And it's like, you will
Mm-hmm.
never accomplish the dreams that you have for your life if you don't understand what laziness is and what hard work is, and decide intentionally which one you're going to be. Because I think when you're pursuing a dream, when you're trying to build a business, when you're trying to run a freelance business on the side, like, there is no middle ground. There is either hard work or there's laziness. And middle ground is where, you might be for a client or two, but you will never find yourself gaining traction because you won't get the referrals. And I found that freelancing, it's all about the referrals because you don't have the money to invest in the marketing, right? Like maybe a website, right? But other than that, you're working 9 to 5 and you're coming home, and in the spare moments you're doing some freelancing. So you said you kind of started doing a logo here or there. How did you wind up gaining more clients as time went on? You said you do musicians now, you have some authors, things like that. How did you gain clients as time went on? Did you do any active advertising, or what did that look like?
Yeah, I have never actively advertised anywhere ever, and so every single client I've gotten has been word of mouth or a friend or a family friend or family member. And the bad thing about that is that eventually your network is going to run out. Like, you will have done a logo or something for everyone you know,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, one of my things is that you have to do a good job every time. Even if you're making a thank you card for your grandma, like, if you do a really good job with her, she's going to tell people about it. And
Yeah,
yeah, it's a really lame project, but it means the world to her. And so
yeah.
when you give that meaning and that worth to that project, to that person, they're going to be doing all the work for you.
That's fantastic. I love that. I did my wife, she thought I was just like, she knows what I do, but I don't think she understands it until 2 years ago, my son was turning 1, and she was like, I'm looking for Curious George invitations, and I can't find affordable ones anywhere. I was like, well, just find a picture online, and I'll just make a quick invitation. She's like, oh, you know how to do that? Like, yeah, that's what I do every day. Like, that's my job. And she's like, oh my gosh, that's perfect. And so she wrote up exactly what she wanted her invitation to be. And then at the party, she told everyone, was like, oh, those invitations were so cute. She had them printed up at Costco and sent them out. And she was like, Dave did it all. He's the one who made it happen. And so I don't know if that turned into any business, but it's true to that thing of, if you do good work, people will talk about it, even if it is your wife or your grandma, or your significant other or your grandma or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so another way I found clients, how I kind of got into the music business, was there was a local music venue in my small town, Texas, and I loved going to the concerts there, really great artists. They brought in some big names, like, because we were between all the big cities, and so they would make a stopover in our town. So I was like, this is an amazing opportunity that half the town doesn't even know about, and their posters were kind of not great. So I just emailed the venue and I said, look, I'm a designer. I love coming to your concerts. Can I please do your posters for you? And I didn't talk about money. I didn't say I'd do it for free. I just kind of left it awkwardly hanging out there.
Yeah.
And that kind of gave them the opportunity to enter into the conversation. And so we kind of did a barter system, which I love doing. They let me into all the concerts for free, and I did all their big concert posters. And to me, that was cool because I got to go to all the concerts I loved. I got to market the thing that I loved. And then people started seeing my posters and being like, oh, hey, can you do one for me too? And bands started asking me to do it. So sometimes you just have to ask. And if it's a passion project, that could turn into something else. And I think as a designer or a freelancer of any kind, you have to be willing to take a step forward without knowing if there's going to be any benefit to you, but to step forward knowing that you care about it enough that you want to help it along anyway.
That's so valuable. That's incredibly valuable because I think anybody that's going to be watching this has the desire to do this and get paid. And I think a lot of people will already have a portfolio and they're already entered into the, the monetization, phase of it. But there is that reality that there might be somebody watching who's like, look, I don't have any clients. I don't really have a portfolio. This is something that I'm passionate about. I think I have some skill in it. How do I get my first client? And that's a really, really great example of sometimes you just have to ask, and you go out there and you say, hey, can I do this? Can I do this for you? And whether it is you say you do it for free or not, like, can I do this for you? I know that this has nothing to do with necessarily artistics, although there would probably be some in the profession who would disagree, but I had a friend who said, hey, would you mind DJing our wedding? I said, yeah, no problem. I'll do that for you. That's my wedding gift to you. And that was especially a great wedding gift because I was young and poor. So I just borrowed all
Hey,
of the sound equipment. Yeah, exactly. I borrowed all the sound equipment from the church. I asked her what songs she wanted. And I went around, gathered up all the CDs from my friends to get all the songs that she wanted, and she purchased some too. And I set up. And Emily, I just have to say, I did a knock it out of the park job DJing the wedding. I knew everybody's, and like I have a pretty open personality, so like I'm up on stage like calling people out, be like, "Hey, Greg, I don't see you out on the floor. Come on, man, let's do it." And so like it was really, really fun. And because I knew everyone, it really added a unique dynamic. Well, like a week later, I got a call from somebody else saying, "Hey, would you mind DJing my wedding?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem. Just give me a couple $100 and I'll do it." And so, then I had another call from somebody who I didn't know asking if I would DJ in their wedding. And I made the decision then that's like, hey, this isn't what I'm going to get into. Like, I don't have a passion for this. But it was that idea of, had I kept going at that, and had I been providing a service that people took notice of, and people were just like, hey, this DJ at the wedding he was just fantastic. Like, he wasn't awkward at all. He was really great. Like, it just snowballs from there. And I think I have a buddy, and I'm not going to like drop his name or anything, but he's a very, very successful Hollywood director. And I remember he went to school to be a teacher. But all the while he was in school, he was borrowing video equipment from just friends and family to do these little music videos. And so there was one band that he did a music video for, and I'm not going to say their name because I really don't want anyone to connect him to it because he doesn't know I'm sharing this. But there was one band that it's one of these like C-list indie bands that like, yeah, they'll sell 300 or 400, maybe 400 at a concert, but it's a really niche, market that knows them. And he was just like, hey, can I do a music video for you? And for them to agree to it was pretty big deal. But they said, yeah, that's great. And so he did a music video for them. And after that, he started, well, actually, let me take that back. He first designed their T-shirts, and they paid him like $100 a design for their band T-shirts. Then he did a music video for them. Then he did a music video for one of their friend bands. And all of a sudden, it just snowballed to where now he does music videos in Hollywood all of the time, and it's what he does for a living. He launched his own media company. They do all sorts of really awesome projects, but that wasn't even what he tried to do in the beginning. He was going to be a teacher, and he just developed this passion and found these really cool opportunities, and he did a lot of it for free at the beginning, and I think that's something that we'll have to talk about here because I saw on Twitter someone said to me that they fight the battle that freelance equals free. And I know that that's a battle that you've had to fight too. What has that looked like? How have those conversations looked when you've been talking with a client and, maybe in the past you've done free work for somebody or for them, but freelance doesn't equal free. How do you have those conversations? How do you deal with the money aspect of it?
well, usually I'm pretty upfront about stuff like, okay, well, I'll let you know my costs, and I'm going to forward the contract. And throwing words like that out kind of lets people know, like, hey, this is legit. This is not a free thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have done some free work for people. Usually it's nonprofits or things I care about, favors for friends, for initiatives that I care about.
Mm-hmm.
And if it gets to the point where it's too much and I can't take it on, then I'll just politely say no. And they usually understand too. If you talk to them about it instead of being awkward about it, everyone's going to understand. Like, I only have 6 to 8 hours of freelance time per evening, if not less.
Yeah.
Would I rather be spending that not making money or making money? Like, you have to fit in what you're going to do. Like, if making money is a preference for you right then you have to pick the making of money. And but the other question with that is sometimes people say, oh, well, here's this free job. If I do it, it's good exposure, it's good for my portfolio, which that's a whole other argument. But there's also the argument of if I say no, it's not like anyone else is going to come and fill that space in the next week. And that's been kind of a hard thing for me to learn too, because saying no to some projects, even though I know there might not be a project to fill the void if I do say no, it kind of frees me up mentally to work on my own stuff.
Yeah.
And you never know what's going to happen. Sometimes projects come on my lap and I'm like, I'm so glad I am not busy right now because this is a dream project. How did I get to work on it? So just be wise with what you're accepting if it's free work, and be very honest about why you can or why you can't.
Yeah, I like that. What I hear you saying is something very important that I think we all need to, really take notice of is that when you begin to get clear on what you want to do, what's important to you, you give yourself the option of what you're going to do for what rate. And like you said, like you give yourself the option of, hey, this is a cause that's really dear to me, and this is something that I want to be a part of, no matter what the pay is, versus hey, this is something that I'll enjoy doing, but at the same time, like somebody else is going to be making money in the end on this, so I need to be compensated for my work too. I think it's well spoken too, Emily. I found that whenever I've been upfront about my cost and just said, hey, this is what I charge per hour. I mean, I don't charge per hour anymore, but my business is in a little bit different phase. Just over the last 7 months, I charge more based on value, and when clients start asking, well, how many hours did it take? That's irrelevant, because how much value is it adding to your business, right? So that's a different conversation. But in the beginning, it was just easy to charge per hour because all the work was the same to me. I mean, that's the way that I approached it. But I was very upfront. I was very honest about this is the amount of time that I have to work on this. This is the amount of time I'm going to need to work on this. This is what I charge per hour, and this is the deadlines that I have to have everything by. And the more honest you are with people, the more information they have to enter into that agreement with you. And tell me if this has been true to you. People who have a lot of information and know everything up front and still, come enter into the agreement with you, they wind up being better clients in the long run than those who you kind of don't have all the information up front, and they wind up asking you to do things that are outside the scope of what the original conversation was. Like the more you get firmed up front, the less awkwardness there will be on the back end. And even on top of that, the ones who pay a little bit more, like who are okay with a higher hourly rate, they don't complain as much because they feel the value that they're getting, like they're hiring you for your expertise. Has that been true in your case, or a version of that?
Yeah, I've kind of grown into that with my business. I don't do hourly anymore either. And so I put all of the scope and what I'm working on in the contract, and they sign it off. And I have a very clear line in there that says work will not begin until all materials are sent to the designer. So
Yeah.
they have the expectation, like, I'm not working on this until you have your stuff together. Like, I can't work on something until I get all of the stuff for it. It's just fair to me, it's fair to them, it's time efficient, and I feel like it sets up boundaries and goals for each person so that we can respect each other a little bit more too.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the financial piece of it. Not in terms of
I was,
what do you charge. What's that?
I was just
What's
going to
that?
talk about that.
Oh,
I was going to talk about finance. That's
yeah. Well, I mean,
amazing.
we can talk about that too. But the piece that I really wanted to lean into is this idea of we take these jobs in, and some money comes into it, and depending on where people are at in their freelancing journey, like $50, $100, $200. I mean, it's all a moving target of what a good value is. But how would you approach reinvesting that money into your craft? Do you have any type of strategy for taking some of that money and reinvesting it into training for yourself, or paying for tools, or paying for website functionality, or do you find you don't even really need to do that? You just kind of stay focused on what you're doing and you just bull forward? And I'll answer that first, because it's been a huge learning thing for me. So you can formulate your answer. But in the past, I used to really quibble over $15 for a plugin, or I was doing a 3D a 3D packaging design, and it was like $70 for the product, and I was going to make $150 on the project. And I was like, I don't want to spend $70 on it, And so you wind up searching the internet for hours trying to find a free template that you can just kind of customize. And so I found myself really trying to save a dollar and use my time. And as my time became more requested in terms of my, my wife and my kids and, other things that I just want to do, like just, or doing nothing, like as that became more in demand, my time became more in demand, I was like, you know what? I'll spend $70 on a program that will help me complete a $150, project in a matter of an hour. Like I'll do that, right? Because in the long run, it's gonna work out better for me because I'm gonna save time, and I'll have that software for the future. So I found that I begin to be a little bit more freeing with. I'll give you another example. Buffer has a business plan, and it's $50 a month, and I really don't want to pay for it. I really didn't want to pay for it because I don't need I just need just about nothing from it, except it provides one really key feature that I use all the time, and it is the contribution approvals. So my team, I have them write social media updates, but rather than just posting them to my client sites, they come to me for approval. And so as a result of that $50 plan, now I have streamlined the process of approving the posts that my employees make, and I don't have to schedule it myself. I just go in, look at it, say, done, approved, and it goes out. And if I need to make a change, I can just make a change right there. So that saves me probably 2 or 3 hours every single month, where $50 a month, it's like that's just a drop in the hat if it's saving me 3 hours. You know what I mean? So has that entered into your thought process or your approach at all as you built your freelancing business?
A little bit. I'll back up a little bit farther.
Okay.
So started hustling with freelance because I was in debt. I had a car payment that I wanted to get rid of, and I was doing Dave Ramsey, and he was like, just pay off all your debt. And I was reading a bunch of authors and artists' blogs that were saying, you're not going to be a good business owner if you have debt. Like, you just need to pay it off because then you're free with your money and with your mental space. And so that was my hustle for the longest time, was just using all of my
Yeah.
freelances going towards debt. So once I
Yeah.
paid off the debt, I was like, this is like amazing. I get to keep the money that I'm earning. And it was a little hard for me to manage it at first just because it's like so much excess. What am I supposed to do with this? But then
Yeah.
I talked to a guy, and he said, because I still work full time, I don't need any of my extra freelance money.
Hmm.
I actually never touch it for business purposes. So he recommended that for every paycheck that I get in from a client, put 50% in savings and 50% in a business checking. And so you never touch business savings. That's for taxes and unexpected stuff, or like emergencies for your business. And then the business checking is what I pay for conferences or for website plugin stuff like you were talking about, or workshops. Like I just spent a ton of money recently on a conference and a workshop, and then a couple of online resources that I know I'm going to use. And it kind of hurts to spend that money because it's like I know how long it took me to earn that money, but at
Yeah.
the same time, the return on investment of what I'm spending is like so far above what I'm paying for. So for conferences, my value is in the relationships. I mean, I get so much out of the inspiration too. Like every time I go to a conference, I feel so much more spurred to work hard and be a better business person, be a better artist. And so
Yeah.
that's very, but then the relationships, like having the accountability partners to say, okay, I can tool over this design for a couple hours myself, or I can just post it on Dribble, and all my friends are going to comment on it, and then
Yeah.
they're going to help me get to something better rather than doing it by myself.
Yeah.
So to me, the value of what you spend your money on has to kind of reflect what that money is in the first place, like you were saying.
Absolutely. Okay, so speaking of conferences, I am at the Icon conference here in Phoenix. It's the Infusionsoft conference, so I'll just turn like I'm in the Phoenix Conference Center right here, and
So
it's a really, really, really pretty facility. And there, you can see there's lots and lots of seating. So I've never been in a conference hall before where seating, like nice, like comfortable seating, has been plentiful, where thousands of people can gather and everyone can find a nice comfortable seat. So that's been really, really nice. But it's like you said, like you spend money on the things that you value. And I was blessed in that I got a free ticket because I have some friends who work at Infusionsoft. So I was thinking about going, but then as soon as they were like, hey, we've got a ticket for you, I was like, fantastic, I'll take it. But I'm making an investment here of my time, right? Like I am investing 3 days from 8:30 in the morning till I won't leave here today until 7:15 at night, I'm making this huge investment, but it is something that will be for my good, that will help further the cause, that'll help me build my business, and that'll help me, make more money in the end and accomplish whatever those goals and those values are. So absolutely. So, I feel like I'm just kind of jumping around, but I have so many different questions that I want to get to, that I want to ask. And the next one that I want to ask about, I have two actually. The first one is about what was I going to say? Oh, balancing your day job and balancing freelance work, and how does that happen? And then, what type of community have you seen develop around you as a freelancer? So the first one, like, how do you find yourself? We talked about this last DAC talk in with John Meese, but how do you find that you balance your day job with your freelancing, and you stay focused on one thing at a time, and you're diligent, but you also, you're working on your passion?
Hmm. So I'm in the middle of reading Born to Win by Zig Ziglar right now, and he talks about this kind of aspect of work really well. He says, you can't be a good business person if you're a bad family man, or if you're a bad this. Like, you have to be kind of holistic approach to your life. I'm single. I don't have kids or a husband or anything like that to worry about, which is great because I have more time to freelance. But at the same time, people with kids and with spouses and with family commitments, it's not so much a balance, and even for me too, it's not a balance. It's a tipping the point and being like, oh, that was too much, and then easing off the gas for a little bit and
Yeah.
going over here for a little while.
Yeah.
So it's not really balance as much as figuring out the tipping point for each one, and then figuring out what that is, because it's always a moving target. Like, one week your family's going to need you 10 times more than the next week. It's just people are people, and humans are never going to be predictable. So I think we have to be, what's the word I'm looking for? We have to be
Flexible, fluid, go with the flow.
understanding of human nature.
Understanding of human nature. That's very good. Better than I would
Yes.
have put it. Um, okay. So you've got your friends and family, and they have they demand certain aspects of your time. Yet when you're freelancing, and you're building that up, like you said, like you'll go on Dribble and you'll throw something out there. How have you found that community develop on that end? And I'll start it by saying, you're a part of an online kind of pseudo mastermind that I created, or that I kind of initiated back in August, I think, of last year. And really, honestly, Emily, I did that for a pretty selfish reason, but really noble reason at the same time. Like, I knew I was launching my business, and I had all these connections on Twitter, and I was like, how do I take this conversation and the encouragement that I found from these people on Twitter, and how do I make it more readily accessible to myself and to all the other people? And so essentially what we did, and you were a big part of this, just as all the other 9 people who are a part, we said, we're going to take this relationship off of Twitter, and we're going to move it into another platform. And we chose Slack. We use Slack, and you're really good about posting in there, but essentially that community has become a encouragement zone, and we have different channels in that Slack team that, some to talk about our frustrations, some to talk about our successes, some to just shoot the breeze, talk about what we're doing. And so I know that that's been a huge piece for me in launching my business, knowing that, hey, I need to have a community of people around me who, my family can't challenge me in the same ways that, my peers can in terms of launching a business and things like that. So that's kind of what I did, and I know that that plays a part with you because I see some of the things that you post. But how have you developed that community? Because doing freelance work, especially when you're working on a tough project that you might not have really wanted to take in the first place, I mean, that can be really frustrating place, and you need some support. So where have you gone and found that support?
So, having moved from small town Texas, where there were very few creative people, and I shouldn't say that, very few designers. There are creative people there, just not my kind of creative. So I felt no community there whatsoever. If I threw up a design, everyone would be like, I love it, it's great. I'm like, I don't want your validation, I want your feedback. So
Yeah.
the internet millennial, and I said, okay, I need contacts. And first I approached people that were speaking at conferences, and I followed them because I figured I would absorb their knowledge by proxy. and that works to some extent. And then I went to the people that I met at the conferences, and I followed them and kind of said, oh yeah, thanks for that one talk that we had at lunch during that one conference, just kind of following up with them and establishing
Hmm.
that online relationship back and forth. And a lot of times it's one-sided. I don't know if it's just because I'm I'm put off by people or they're put off by me, or if there's just no personal connection, or if they've got too many friends already, they don't need another online person trying to hit them up for
Hmm.
advice. But to me, it's not about them putting themselves into me and making me better. It's about me making connections and seeing how I can help other people. I feel
Hmm.
like a lot of times, if you want help and if you want to grow, you need to give more of yourself to other people. So if I
Yeah.
want to learn and grow, then I need to help others do the same thing, and it's just going to happen naturally. So all of my contacts, pretty much over the last year, I made online. Like I've never met you in person, but I'm like, oh yeah, Dave, I know Dave. I
Yeah.
don't, I've never met you, but you're cool, and we hang out online all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. We've met. I think we've met in person. Not you and I. You and I haven't met in person, but in
Right.
person we've met other people who we've been connected to, and it's one of these deals where it's like, I don't know. I hopefully this isn't too far, but like when I meet you, like I'll give you a hug, right? Because like we've developed
I
this
feel like
relationship, this friendship over the course of time, and it's like, when did that ever happen before? Like, when would you, finally meet somebody in person that you've never known before, and go up and say, hey, it's so good to see you, and just give them a great big hug. I think that the reason that I think you and I have been able to find so many great relationships on Twitter is because I've said this before on DAC Talk, but like dreaming is dangerous. And dreaming leads you to do all sorts of crazy, insane things. Like it leads you to quit your job. It leads you to leave your hometown. It leads you to go to a place you've never been before. It leads you to, room with a whole bunch of people you've never met, and experience who knows what kind of a living situation. It leads you to, buckle down and pay off all your debt. It's dangerous. It leads you to do a whole bunch of crazy things that just don't make sense. And I think people have a huge appetite for dreaming, but when it comes to actually consuming the hard work that it takes to dream, they just don't have a hunger for it. But when you go online, you're able to find those people who truly hunger to reach their dreams the way that you do, and it's just a natural connection. It's like I would have never found you before, yet here we are, and we can encourage one another and build one another up, and it's just a really, really neat thing, and it's unlike anything I've ever experienced before. People always wonder why I'm always on Twitter and I do what I do on Twitter, and it's because I found the most encouragement from people who understand what it is I do, who can, yeah, I don't need your validation, I need your critique, and people who will honestly critique you, and they'll let you know what you're doing well, and they'll challenge you to improve. And so yeah, it's absolutely fantastic what type of networking capabilities there are to, receive that encouragement, that feedback, that, whatever it is you need, there's somebody out there online who could do it. But I think it does take putting yourself out there, and I applaud you for that. I know that that's something that you're very intentional about, of, hey, whether or not this person's going to get back with me, I'm going to put myself out there, and we'll see, if a relationship conform. And I think that's a huge piece of it. You got to be willing to put yourself out there and be willing to get zero, reply back on Twitter or whatever the case might be.
And it's interesting on that note to see where I started and where I am now. So I would follow designers I thought were really great, or people I met at conferences when I first started out, and I had like 200 Twitter followers and like 5 shots on Dribbble, and my portfolio site was kind of lame. And understandably so, these amazing designers would be like, I don't know if I can get in with that. You need a lot of help, and I don't know if I can invest that kind of
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
There were some, and so I built up myself, I built up my work, and then I built up my Twitter following. I don't even know how that happened, but eventually,
You just being you,
once
that's how it happened.
you once you build up yourself and your work and your online presence, people start to notice.
Yeah.
And so if you just keep working hard, like don't give up just because all the cool kids aren't paying attention to you. Just keep working hard and it's going to come, because it's interesting. I've noticed, like, okay, I followed this designer and never got anywhere with them, so I didn't want to waste my time, so I would unfollow them for a while. Well, then maybe a couple years later, I follow them back, and then they follow me back right away. I'm like, what is this? Did I suddenly become cool? It's like, now that Nashville is in my Twitter bio, it's like, oh, a designer from Nashville. That's cool. So it's interesting how people's perception really matters. So if you work hard, not to please others, but you need to work hard to build yourself up and create the intentionality of, I'm serious about this.
Absolutely. Oh, golly, you said something about, shoot, I can't remember. Anyways, it's okay. It'll come back to me. Kyle has been super active on Twitter. Kyle, bro, I have appreciated you. And let me just say, Kyle, like, Kyle and I, yeah, you know Kyle too. Kyle's another one of those guys that we met on Twitter, and we just connected. I don't remember even the context of how we met, Kyle, but I knew you were new to Twitter. You had questions, so I answered a few of your questions for you, and we just kind of connected. I think I've sent Kyle 1 or 2 books, and the guy's just rad. And so he's heavy on Twitter tonight, and he's doing a good job of capturing the brilliance of what we say. But anyways, he asks a question. He says, a mastermind group. He says, what's the common ground for the group? So Kyle, I'll explain real quick what I did. Basically, I had the idea of creating an online group for like-minded people, and I just put out a tweet. I said, hey, if you're interested in friendship, community, and communication, let me know. I have 10 spots. And that was essentially all that it was. I mean, is that what you remember, Emily? Is that pretty much what you saw?
Yeah, and then once you kind of got your email list, I think you sent out an email to everyone and said, all right, here are the group guidelines. You need to post this often. You need to be accountable to this. You need to participate. And, like, everyone had to agree to those before they were invited into the group. I mean,
Yeah.
it's great to be wanted and say, oh, I'm in this cool mastermind group, but if you're not going to participate, you're hurting yourself and you're kind of hurting the other people too.
Absolutely, and it's true that when you're in a part of a group like that. So I put it out there. I had 10 people respond. 2 of them said, hey, this isn't for me. Actually, I had 12 people respond. 2 of them said, this isn't for me. And everybody else came in. And I said, for 6 months, like you said, these are the guidelines. And things have changed over the time. But everybody had skin in the game at the very beginning. And the skin in the game is that they gave their word that they were going to invest the time necessary for this. And for the most part, everybody did. And it has wound up developing a pretty strong community. We've talked about expanding it. It seems like the group has kind of shifted and changed a little bit over time to where expansion at one stretch wasn't necessarily a good idea, and we may reevaluate it. But right now, it's just been a really good hub to where people are very comfortable asking for opinions and asking for feedback because they know that the group will be very readily available to give it back, because at that point in time, another member of the group is going to actually need to ask. So everybody's just been really, really great. And quite honestly, it's been a great community. Now, for those who are watching, just a FYI, like both Emily and myself and everybody in our group, we're all Christians. And so that's a very strong common thread. That wasn't a prerequisite of the group at all. It just kind of wound up being the type of people that we had been connected with so far. And that's the people in the group. And so it's been really cool, whether you believe in Jesus or not, like, I'm sure you can appreciate just the idea of, it's been a group that when somebody says, hey, this is going on in my life, this is very important to me, this is very serious, people have just said, hey, we'll pray for you. And so no matter what your faith background is, I think you can see the value there in having people say, hey, like we got your back, man. Whatever that looks like we've got your back. And that's been huge, because when you're working on a project and you're incredibly frustrated with it, or when you are trying to work on a project yet life is just hitting the fan, to have somebody say, hey, I got your back, I'll be praying for you. I mean, that's just fantastic. So that's what it is. If there's anybody else watching, and I know you are, because I can see the statistics down here at the bottom, feel free to use the hashtag on Twitter, DAC Talk, and ask us any questions that you may have. The whole point of DAC Talk, everyone, is that we would just be open and honest and transparent about our journeys as entrepreneurs and our journeys as creatives. And whatever that looks like for us, it might not look like for you, but there might be something that you could learn from us and that we could learn from you. So feel free to use that hashtag. And if you're listening on the podcast, because we did launch a podcast for DAC Talk, and you can visit the website, dactalk.net to subscribe to the podcast and see all of the past episodes. If you're listening, don't feel like you missed out on the conversation. I keep monitoring that hashtag, and if something comes in for either myself or Emily, we'll get back to you on it. So if you've got any questions for us, feel free to use that hashtag right there, right now, and we'll talk about it. Otherwise, Emily, we'll just keep going here. Another question that I had is, how have you come up with a system to develop, what kind of clients you really want to take on? Have you had to say, hey, this project isn't right for me, and just kind of, say this, we'll just part.
Uh-oh, I lost you for a second.
Still be friends, or can you hear me?
Oh, you cut out for a second. I'll just go ahead and
Oh, okay.
answer the question I heard.
So
I haven't had to say no to too many clients. Usually I can tell if we're not going to jive well together from the get-go, which is good. Either they're so polar opposite of me that I can tell, or I'm good at reading people. I don't know. But it's been a couple times, not too often, where people approach me, and usually the line, I can't pay much, is a big red flag for me. I mean, I'm pretty generous a lot of the times. Like, I just like helping people. Like I said, my freelance is extra income, so I can afford to kind of give people a break if I believe in what they're doing. And I like to do that. But if they kind of lead off with that, it's very much a turn off for me. I'm like, okay, if they're going to cut corners from the get-go, I don't know what that says about our relationship. I don't know what that means about how they're going to interact with me. And I usually email back and forth with clients a few times, maybe 5 or 10 times before I even send the contracts, just asking a lot of questions. And I feel like those interactions are going to be the big indicators of, is this client going to be a good fit for both of us too? Because you don't want to waste their time, and they don't want to waste your time. So I've only had to fire one client mid-project, and that was because they changed the scope, and we were doing draft after draft after draft, and I would do what they recommended, but then they wouldn't like it, and then they would change their mind completely, and I'd do that again, and I was just like, okay, this isn't going anywhere. You need to figure out what you want before I can work anymore, so let's just cut off payment right here. You go your way. If you're ready, you can come back, or if you want to hire someone else, that works too. So, I mean, I feel everyone should be honest with their clients, and if at any point you feel weird about it, don't go through with it. Like, I don't even care how much you need the money. You should go deliver pizzas instead of taking on a bad client.
Yeah. That's so true. I had a client that you just know it. Like, I don't know if it's something that you just learn over time or if it was just innate, but there was a client that he was starting a brand new business, and the second that I walked into his office, I was just like, I don't think this is going to be a good fit. Like, just, and it wasn't like filthy. I mean, it was a brand new office and everything like that, but I just walked in and immediately it was like, I don't think this is going to work. And we hadn't talked price, we hadn't talked scope of project, we hadn't talked anything, but my gut said, like, this is a bad idea. So I talked with them, and I have a heart, Emily, I really, really have a heart to see small businesses succeed. That's just what I want to do, because small business owners don't have the time to become experts at the thing that I do. So that's why my ideal client is somebody who is passionate and absolutely loves what they do and doesn't want to learn or not have an opinion, doesn't want to learn or become the expert at the things that I do. That's my ideal client. They hire me for my expertise, not to order me around. That's my ideal client, right? So when I walked in, I just thought, like, I think this guy loves what he does. I'm not positive. I mean, he's launching a business. I think he loves what he does, but he didn't have his stuff together. All he said was, this is what the same shop is doing down the street. I want it to look just like this because I know that this works, and I'm not going to invest any money in social media. I'm not going to invest any money in search. I'm going to do everything in radio ads. And I'm just listening to him. I'm like, dude, you're going to be throwing away thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I got him up and running. I got his email up and running. I put a splash page up there, and I was about ready to cut it off, and he goes, hey, I just want to let you know my friend's going to do my website for free. I was like, cool, go for it, man. Have at it. It was a nightmare just getting his email set up and communicating with him. I asked actually a buddy of mine who referred me to him, and he said that I asked him, I was like, how's that business going? He goes, not good. He's just blowing through cash and he's not getting any business. And I kind of told my buddy, I was like, I could kind of see that coming. I just got a bad vibe from it from the get-go. So it's true. Like, yeah, you kind of just have to, yeah, that's right. You just got to go with your gut. Let's see here. Jimmy Schaefer. Hey, Jimmy. Glad you're watching. Glad you're chiming in. Dak Talk, invite me to chat. I don't know what that means. You can chat on Twitter, and you did. And you wrote, how do you feel about working with family in freelance? Emily, have you ever worked with any family or brought in any family in freelancing?
Yes, I've done some things for family, and it's usually just little stuff here and there. And then I'd say a year and a half ago, my parents asked me to design my dad's retirement ceremony invitations, which I was like, yeah, I can do that. I've done invitations all the time. But because it was family, I was setting up this wall in my mind that it had to be perfect and that it would just be amazing. And I kept procrastinating on it, which I don't typically do with freelance projects, but because they're my family, oh, they'll know, and they don't need it right away. And I was making all these excuses, and eventually I just talked to my parents about it, and they were like, if you have issues about your perception of us or what we're going to think of it, like, we're going to like whatever you create. We don't care. We're not designers. But I was making it a bigger deal than it was.
Yeah.
And so after that, I mean, it all turned out great. They made their own invitations, and I had mental stability after that. So, I mean, know your boundaries for sure. I probably will not do more work for family. Now, I still do design work for my dad. He leads Jeep trips in the summer, and I do the t-shirts and stuff for that. But if it's like a formal family thing, like a Christmas letter or an invitation, I just make it this huge thing, and so I probably won't do stuff like that anymore.
Yeah. I have done very little work for family, but I am so here's something. As a freelancer, as an entrepreneur, you need to be able to be honest, not boastful, and not modest. So I'm going to be honest. I'm a very good photographer. I'm not a professional, but I'm very, very good, and I know what looks good. And my family sees that. I have no interest in being a photographer whatsoever. That's not a passion of mine. I love taking pictures, and I love doing it for, different website projects, but I don't want to be a photographer. However, photography is a very costly thing, at least good photography is, and sometimes my family, they're just like, hey, we just don't have the money to hire a photographer. Can you take pictures for us? And so I don't charge my family, but what I do tell them is I tell them two things. One, if you want to make a donation of like $50, that will help me keep my equipment up, that'll help me invest in new equipment, and that'll go towards me being able to hire a photographer to take pictures of our family. And so I found that just being upfront and honest about, for me, the hang up was charging my family, money, and I wasn't charging them, but I knew if I asked for money, they would give it to me. So I wound up telling them what the money was for, why I would suggest that, and that was easier for me to tell them. So I mean, if I was doing graphic work for a family member, and it was a pretty involved project, depending on how close I was to it and how much time it was going to take, I might say something like, hey, this is going to take, all of my nights for the next week, and I'm going to need to buy this piece of software. Excuse me. So, I think this is going to be like $350 if we want to do this. Just being upfront, I think, has been the biggest thing. I don't do a lot of work for family, but when I have, I've been upfront and I've told them things like, I can do this for free, or I can do this for you, but I can't do it for free. And I found that that's been kind of helpful. I don't outsource any work directly connected to me to family. I don't do that. I let family take control of their own stuff. So Jimmy follows up. He says, my wife and I are starting up our own wedding videography business, and I would love to ask questions in Hangout in a future event. Oh, hey, Jimmy. Very glad to have you tonight, and we might need to consider having some sort of a informal hangout with a whole bunch of DAC Talk watchers. So thanks for chiming in tonight, man. I really appreciate that. So we're getting towards the end here. It's about 7 minutes till the hour. What other things have we not talked about as it relates to freelance that you think somebody out there who is getting into freelance should be aware of, should be thinking about, should know, should at least have on their radar? Is there anything out there that you can think of, Emily, that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I love reading, so let's talk books that have been really influential. I don't know if you're a reader, or articles even, where
Leaders
we've
are
read
readers,
things that have
Emily.
changed.
Leaders are readers.
Readers are.
Yeah, let's
So
hear them.
you answer the question first, and then I'll put
Oh,
you on the spot.
some books. Books that
Yeah,
I
books.
like.
Talk books.
Yeah, books that I like. People who know me, who follow me online, they probably know the books that I'm going to recommend. I really, I recommend Quitter and Start first and foremost by John Acuff, and I might have just taken two of yours. If I did, I'm not sorry because you're the one who put me on the spot. I do that to so many people. I put them on the spot, but then when I get put on the spot, I'm less than gracious. But no, those are two books that I would start with for the freelancer. A couple other books that I really like if you're starting to go a little bit higher level thinking in terms of what you want your business to be, what you want the culture to be around your work. Good to Great by Jim Elliott. I think, is it Jim Elliott? No, Jim Collins. Jim Elliott was a missionary. Jim Collins. That's a fantastic book. I love that one. Let me think here. There's one called The $100 Startup. I can't remember who it's by, but that's another great, fantastic, most awesome book that you can read. And there's another one called shoot, I can't think of it. I'll look it up real quick. You start sharing yours, and I'll find the name of the other one that I have.
So first, my recommendation would be "Do Over" by John Acuff. I like that one because it talks about a thing he came up with called a career savings account, and so he talks about relationships and your hustle and your dreams and how all of this stuff fits together. And if you take one away, then you're this. And if you take one away from here, then you're this. And you're always going to be lacking if you take one away. You have to approach it from a holistic account. So I really like his new book called Do Over. I mentioned one earlier that I'm in the middle of reading called Born to Win by Zig Ziglar. And that one's more just like leadership, winning at life kind of stuff, but it's so
Mm-hmm.
applicable to business people because I feel like we have to be more intentional about every single aspect of our lives. We can't just float through like maybe people who just are happy with 9-to-5 jobs and going home and hanging out with the family. So that one's really good to figure out the structure of your life. Platform's a good one. I know you've recommended Michael Hyatt's book before. Figuring out how to start your platform and how to maintain that. And pretty much every Seth Godin book ever is great. Every time I read
Yeah.
Seth Godin, I'm like, amazing. Why didn't I know this before? So
You
just
and the
go to your
rest of the
book.
world, right?
No, he's so brilliant, and I feel like I want to be that brilliant one day too.
Okay, so I found the name of the book, the other book that I would recommend, and this is a little bit more if you're building a business, not just freelancing on the side, but it's called Street Smarts, an all-purpose toolkit for entrepreneurs. I really like that a lot, and here's a couple books that I'll recommend, but I'll recommend them with a caveat, and the caveat is I find that a lot of the way that I approach freelancing, my business, my work, has a lot to do less with what I've read about freelancing and entrepreneur, ventures, and more just about life in general. And one author that I just love for the science of life is Malcolm Gladwell. So I will read his books just to get a greater education on life, get a better education on understanding the human condition, understanding how humans think, and that's just been invaluable. And quite honestly, reading books like Malcolm Gladwell's Blink, Malcolm Gladwell's What the Dog Saw, that's a really good one to get started with. Malcolm Gladwell's Tipping Point and David and Goliath, like all of those, I lean on the illustrations that he provides in those books to help me articulate concepts and truths to clients. And so it really allows me to take things that are very technical that I might do in the creative space and translate it into a very tangible and very temporal example that clients can understand. So, just learning in general will help you be a well-rounded person. And people like working with people who are well-rounded. You'll walk away from a initial meeting with a client or step away from a phone call, and your client will literally say about you, that person gets it, or I think I'm going to like working with this person, or I enjoyed that conversation, or I feel like I have a lot to learn from that person. And that's what happens when you are well-rounded and well-educated in just in life and in social skills and culture. So that would be something else that I would add. So Emily, we have reached the end here. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and I'm glad that you were feeling better. I was a little bit nervous, not only because, oh, Emily's the one that I asked, but two, I really wanted to hear, what you had to say. So I was glad that you felt better. So if people want to, continue to connect with you, where would you like to send them? Because you have been a huge influence and encouragement to me, and I would love for other people to be able to experience that as well.
Yep, Emily A. Carlton at Twitter and on Instagram. Pretty much everywhere is Emily Carlton or Emily A. Carlton. I have the same picture everywhere, so just look for the curly hair.
Which that's a really, really, really good tactic. If you're going to be on multiple social networks, have the same picture on all of them, especially if you're trying to project your brand. You got to do that. So real quick, Jimmy had one more question. He says, do you take small, non-refundable payment from clients before handing over final project? If so, is there a, hey, this isn't working out, pay me clause? Hey, so
Yep.
Jimmy, yes, I used to not take money up front. Now I always take 50% up front. That's my deal, and if someone can't pay me 50% up front, then the likelihood of them being able to pay me 100% in the end is very, very low. I will make exceptions, but that's at my discretion, not theirs. Emily, what's your stance?
Same thing. If it's a stranger or someone I've never met in person or not a friend, then I get something up front. The percentage varies on how big the project is and how long it's going to take. And then if it's a friend, like someone I know really well and I trust them 100%, I won't ask for something up front because I know they're good on their payment.
Yeah. Yep. Very good. All right, Emily, appreciate it. This was great. Thank you. And for everybody watching, just remember that you can go to dactalk.net. That's DACTALK.net. You can access this episode, all of the past episodes. Show notes are there, and you can click the icon or the iTunes menu item in the upper right-hand corner of the menu, and you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate this community, and we'll be back at you in another couple weeks with another DAC Talk. See ya. Bye, Emily.
Bye.